Look, I of all people know that what we in Britain call sweets, Americans call candy. But I'm sorry, America, candy corn tastes nothing like sweet corn. They're different things. Right. Hello, this video is sponsored by Wondrium. I'm Lawrence Brown and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to things and or stuff. Specifically, things and or stuff that one country has in abundance that the other doesn't even have a word for. In other words, this is the long-awaited sequel to part 3, in which I talked about cornhole, gumbo, nor'easters and much more. And if you would like to watch part 3, click on its thumbnail at the end of this video. And since this is one of my favourite series, why not binge watch part 1 and 2 while you're at it? Anyway, without further ado, here are 8 American things that Britain doesn't even have a word for. Part 4. Oh, you're reading this correctly. Pumpkin chucking, or as it's otherwise known, punkin chunkin or pumpkin chunking. And it's a testament to just how little this is known of in the United Kingdom, because even as a long-time Brit myself who happens to live in the Midwest of the United States, I only recently became aware of this phenomenon when I was on a secret live stream with my patrons. Basically, punky chunky, or whatever it's called, is a sport in which contestants throw pumpkins as far as they can, but they don't just throw them with their hands, they use devices in order to maximize distance. So they might use slingshots, catapults, trebuchets, pneumatic cannons, interstellar lasers. I made that last one up. What's going on, America? You wouldn't see Britain using food for sport. Cheese rolling, yep, good point. And just as cheese rolling makes perfect sense in Gloucestershire, where cheese is all the rage, so too does pumpkin chucking right here in Illinois, which, as I've pointed out before, is sort of the pumpkin production capital of the world. So when I first moved to the United States, there was a particular brand of vehicle that really got my attention. The Hummer. I hadn't seen anything like it in Britain. This bulky, gas-guzzling iteration of an SUV was all over Indiana's roads in 2008. And there seemed to be this bizarre crossover between Hummers and reckless driving. In fact, a 2008 study found that Hummer drivers were more likely to be ticketed than drivers of other vehicles, but I digress. But recently, it occurred to me that I hadn't seen many of them on the roads since those early days in America. And back then, of course, they came to shape my early views of American roads. But it turns out that General Motors, by then the parent company of the Hummer, discontinued the brand in 2010 after failing to secure buyers amid the recession. And since they were discontinued, you're probably thinking, well, Lawrence, why are you including them in this video? Well, it turns out that the vehicle was relaunched last year, only this time electric. No word yet on whether this one can actually fit into parking spaces. BAYOUS, which I am reliably informed is the plural of bayou. A bayou, according to Wikipedia, is a body of water typically found in a flat, low-lying area. It may refer to an extremely slow-moving stream, a marshy lake or wetland, or a creek whose current reverses daily due to tides. So a bayou seems to have many definitions. I mean, Britain has streams and rivers and wetlands, but we don't have a word that can adequately describe all of them. And maybe that's why I'm still a little unclear as to what a bayou is. When Forrest Gump describes a bayou in the film Forrest Gump, it's a perfectly still body of water reflecting the landscape behind it. Perhaps some of my viewers in the southern Gulf states will be more than happy to provide their insight in the comments below. What I do know is that the word bayou entered American English via Louisiana French, and may well have stemmed from the Choctaw word bayuk, meaning small stream. Anybody who's watched the first 3 videos in this series will know that there's always at least one entry like this, a thing that's even unfamiliar to some Americans. And that's because maple custard pies are a cuisine of New England. And while I've yet to have it, I do know that its creation was the result of an anti-slavery push to boycott cane sugar production in the West Indies. In this regard, maple sugar became the sugar of choice among those opposing slavery. And while maple syrup is readily available in the United Kingdom, it doesn't carry the same cultural currency as it does in Canada and the northern United States. And so to that end, maple custard pie wasn't something I'd even heard of until I moved to the US. Another thing that Canada and the northern United States have in common is that they are home to populations of meese. That's definitely the plural for moose. And you might be thinking, why is this entry moose crossing signs? Don't British moose cross the road? And the truth is, we don't really have moose in Britain. So now you might be thinking, why not make this entry moose? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, we did have moose in Britain 3,000 years ago. There wasn't much high-speed traffic on the roads back then. Secondly, 2 moose were reintroduced to Britain in 2013. So I'm in the awkward position of Britain not being entirely without moose, but not having enough to implement nationwide signage. And number 3, and this is perhaps most important of all, if meese were to suddenly flourish in Britain, you're unlikely to see signs saying moose crossing. And that's because in Britain and throughout Europe, this animal goes by the name of elk. It goes without saying that this is not to be confused with the smaller North American mammal of the same name. In part 1 of this series, I talked about s'mores. Now we're talking about sophomores. They're not related in any way. But in the United States, a sophomore is a student in the second year of either high school or higher education. And in Britain, as far as I can remember, we don't really have a word for this except for he or she is in year 11 or the second year of uni. In many ways, though, it is interesting that we don't, because while Americans refer to a student in their first year of university or college as a freshman, we in Britain refer to them as a fresher. Anyway, speaking of education, in past videos, I introduced you to the Great Courses Plus. Well, the team behind those great courses are hard at work creating even better, broader, bigger, and more brilliant educational experiences, giving you more reasons to love and pursue learning. Enter Wondrium, where you can find all of the tried and true Great Courses Plus content and more. For instance, have you ever wondered how English took on a life of its own in America? I'm thrilled to recommend Professor Natalie Schilling's English in America, A Linguistic History. This course even taught me a lot, like, did you know that Noah Webster, the father of American English, wanted to replace the U in soup with a second O? Mind-blowing! Well, Wondrium is where you find the answer to everything you've ever wondered about and some things you never imagined you'd wonder about. Their carefully curated collection of short and long-form videos, tutorials, how-tos, travelogues, documentaries, and more is academically comprehensive, thoroughly researched, relentlessly entertaining, and presented by engaging experts. In a nutshell, Wondrium is the place for minds that wonder. And as it happens, they're giving viewers the fantastic offer of a free trial. Show your support for Lost in the Pond by subscribing to Wondrium today. Visit wondrium.com/lostinthepond right now to begin your free trial. The link is in my description below. I've said it before and I'll say it again, America has some beautiful animals. The bald eagle, the white-tailed deer, the bison, but also the muskrat. And just like the moose, the muskrat is native to the United States and Canada. However, that hasn't stopped it from being invasively introduced to much of Europe, where it's considered a pest. Notice I said much of Europe because that doesn't include Britain. Actually, that's not quite true. Because actually the muskrat was introduced to Britain in the late 1920s. But here's the twist. By 1937, following a British government campaign, the muskrat was gone. And this represents a rare example of an invasive species being successfully eradicated. And because of that, we've moved on. That's in the past. We don't even utter the name muskrat, much less have a word for it. Look, I of all people know that what we in Britain call sweet, Americans call candy. But I'm sorry, America, candy corn tastes nothing like sweet corn. They're different things. Right. So what is candy corn? Well, for my non-North American viewers, candy corn is a collection of sweets, each of which is shaped sort of like a curved pyramid, bearing the colours orange, white and yellow. And it's a really timely entry in this video, because in the United States, candy corn is synonymous with both autumn/fall and Halloween. We don't have candy corn in the United Kingdom, but for those of you asking, yes, it's universally loved among Americans. A sentence I only included to increase activity in the comments section. Funnily enough though, despite its colours, it wasn't always synonymous with fall, and it wasn't always handed out as Halloween candy. In fact, for the first half of the 20th century, it was just basic penny candy that people would eat year-round. It only started getting lumped in with the pumpkins from the 1950s, when Halloween advertising was ramped up. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments below where you stand on candy corn. I'm Lawrence Brown. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at LostInThePondUS, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond. A Hummer-sized shout out to my patrons who make these videos possible. If you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond, you can do so today at patreon.com/LostInThePond. Until the next video, goodbye.